A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Hey, we're turning our attention to the dark sides of digital technologies that have had free access to our families, and often with very detrimental downsides. It's likely you've heard of our next guest on Vision for about the last decade, really, with his cautionary warnings about the harms of the digital world on us and our children. But if you or your family members are caught up in the downsides, you might be looking for some relief. Brad Huddleston's first book was called Digital Cocaine. His newest book is called Digital Rehab, Learning to Live Again in the Real World. Brad is joining us. Hey, Brad, welcome along to 2020.
You still having fond memories of several years ago when you came to our nation's capital, and you and Charmaine and Beth and I had an opportunity to be with you, and we're looking forward to being with you again, both of you, in October when we're in Brisbane. So thank you for having me.
You know what? One of my fondest memories, and listeners might appreciate this, you'll remember that you being our tour guides, and we really appreciate you and your wife, Beth, but there we were at the Smithsonian Air Museum in Washington, D.C., literally standing under the nose of a space shuttle. And what an amazing moment that was. I was so deeply appreciative of, recognition of the technology that pushes humanity into space. Well, while we were standing there, Brad, you'll remember you pointed out to me two young teenagers who were sitting on a chair underneath the space shuttle in a moment when they ought to have been in awe of the experience, but they were completely absorbed in their mobile phone devices. And doesn't that illustrate where perhaps young people are at? Even those awe-inspiring moments doesn't even compare to what's on your mobile device. I mean, I'm just remembering that as a wonderful experience, but that illustrates some of the work you do, doesn't it? So you're working with teens and children.
Yeah, it does, Neil. And Beth and I were in Honolulu, Hawaii on one of our trips down here. We stopped there because I ministered in Honolulu. So we went to Pearl Harbor, which is another one of those, historical landmarks that if you ever get a chance to go, you should. And as we were going through the Pearl Harbor Museum in awe of all these things that had gone on, there was a teenager following his parents. It looked like he was on social media or playing a video game the entire time as we walked through. And it just, we really need to do something about it. And that's our heart. It's not to condemn those who have fallen into that. It's to see them freed from that so that they can enjoy things that probably are a bit more in depth than what they're looking at.
And, it's not just distraction from reality. These sorts of things are shaping the minds of children and teenagers, and that's likely to affect all sorts of things, including the relationships, the close personal family, even the romantic relationships they'll face later on. There are big downsides to this addiction to the technology, aren't there?
There are, Neil, and to be honest with you, we're targeting, I was saying to you off mic, I'm in the latter stages of my doctorate. I'm about to become a smarty pants. Yep. And of course, my dissertation is going to be in digital rehabilitation. So one of the things that we have been targeting are parents. The average age of a video gamer in Australia is 34. And in America, it's 35 to 44, depending on where you live. So the reality is we have to target those who are in the largest demographic of addiction, which are not children. They're parents. And the reason for that is simple. The current crop of parents, we would know them as millennials. They were the first to be dubbed digital natives. And so they were the first to grow up completely immersed in a digital world. Well, now they have children. So they have introduced it, of course, as just a natural consequence of their lifestyle. So we put all this in, as we should, we put all this energy into rescuing children. But in order to rescue the children, my contention is we have to rescue the adults. And so my dissertation, I'm doing two studies. I did one in New York State already at a church, and one, right in the middle of a case study here in Mackay right now, two churches that took adults and children through a digital detox. Their pastors did. And we're gathering that data in an effort to make a curriculum that will roll out globally to learn how people have done this successfully and what has failed, so that we can do that. But my point is, we're having to target the adults first because they're financing all of these devices.
Okay, adults first, and that flows on to their children. Now, when we talk digital detox, some people will be thinking undoubtedly that just means a separation from the digital environment that I'm in. But there's another dimension, isn't there? And that is the idea of learning to live again in the real world. Is this part of what a rehab might look like?
It is. And Neil, where the book cover comes from, I'll just paint a quick visual because we're on radio. It's a 13-year-old boy with a straw down on his iPhone snorting a white substance. Now, in this case, it's zeros and ones. So we called it digital cocaine. And the reason it comes from brain scans. So we rely heavily on neuroscience. And when you look at the brain scans of a cocaine addict or a heroin addict, they will often be identical, nearly identical to a digital addict because the addiction is the same. And what it boils down to is too much dopamine, too much excitement coming from the drug, whether it be the traditional drug or the digital drug. And so the brain gets hijacked in the reward circuit. And so they literally become addictive. This is not a metaphor. And that's been one of the big challenges. People sort of laugh off digital addiction, but it is a literal phenomenon. So when I was on Vision one morning, I'll never forget, I believe it may have been Matt and Karen interviewing me a long time ago. And we were doing a talk back, and we were getting these questions in, and I could tell it was making people a bit nervous talking like this because you think it's a phone, and we rely on it, and my work requires it. So this doctor calls in from Rockhampton who runs the emergency department. And he said, look, in the emergency department here in Rockhampton, we are encountering everything that guy's talking about. Well, I've gone on to become very good friends with that doctor, and he's had me in that hospital talking to the doctors and the nurses. And so the medical establishment has been extremely favorable, including Mackay Base Hospital here. And, they've had me in to talk as well. And they're seeing it in the hospitals. And so one of the nurses told me that of the 120 calls that the ambulance was sent out here at a particular time frame, 50 of them were video game related. The parents will take the device away, the kids throw the fits and the tantrums, and they have to send out the ambulance and so forth. And so that's what we're targeting. We're not talking about the things that people typically don't get addicted to. I mean, I have never ministered to any child or adult who's gotten addicted to Microsoft Word. The practical things that we use. We're talking about the social media, the pornography, the video games. Now, listen, for the office worker who has to be, all day, it is not about the content. They suffer as well. It could be an accountant on Excel who just the sheer hours that are cumulative. But what we're mainly talking about here is the entertainment side that gets the hooks into us, not the practical side. Like you and I right now are on Teams, Microsoft Teams. I've never been addicted to it, but I'll tell you, it is a wonderful platform for me to connect with you. So that's what I'm talking about.
This idea of differentiating between what is good and what actually has a harmful downside. Hey, you've researched this and you understand the science side. But Brad, is there a spiritual dimension in all of this, both in the addiction and somehow getting free from it? As people who have faith in God, and I often will say this is a little bit like a superpower to be able to overcome all sorts of things, is there a spiritual dimension you've been reflecting on?
Neil, absolutely. I'm thinking of yesterday. So I'm in the middle of a case study. So here in Mackay last year in May, I spoke at a church, did a seminar, and spoke on a Sunday morning on digital addiction. The pastor came under conviction, and he grabbed my books and he put himself through a digital detox and talked about it to his congregation. And then they obtained quite a number of my books and put it out to the whole church for those that would like to go through a detox. So a huge percentage of the church followed the pastor into a detox, and the entire month of last August, they went through this. So I went to the university. I'm with Calvary Chapel University in the States. That's where I'm getting my doctorate. And I said, look, there are two churches, one in New York State and one in Australia, whose pastors took them through a detox. I would like to gather that data, and I would like to design a curriculum, learning on how people, it's one thing, Neil, for me to tell people to detox. It's another to get in the middle of life where you're required to use it at school, you're required to use it at work, but you have to go without it for a time in order for your brain to return to homeostasis. So to make my point here about the spirituality, yesterday I'm talking to two young adults. I think one was 22, they're married, and one was 20. And I asked this question, talk to me about your intimacy with God as you detoxed. And Neil, it was so moving because, in their world, everything is so shortcut. You have YouTube shorts. Everything is so, micro, and the attention span is so short because they're flicking from one thing to the next. It was as if they had discovered reading books. I'm talking about ones printed on paper. And they started talking about how the presence of the Lord in that slow, methodical thinking deeply through the Word of God. And so they ditched all of the e-Bibles, and they went and bought the Strong's Concordance from Qumran, like the big thick one, and multiple copies of the Bible printed on paper. And so their young adult group, they're going to have me come and talk to them. They're all going through the scriptures, like they started in Judges and going verse by verse. And to see these young adults capture that, I think, I'm not sure it was their first time, but the depth, they definitely talked about that. It was there had come a depth of the hunger for the Word of God that you just don't get on the internet. So yes, there's a spiritual component, and of course, Neil, when you're talking about addiction, that's a doorway for the devil, of course, to seize control. Whether it be possession, most of the time I think it's oppression, because he just wants us distracted, and it's not always a possession. He just to keep us away from the Word of God or flirt with it enough to be spiritual, but don't go but so deeply. So yes, there is absolutely a spiritual component. And yesterday I heard the testimonies of young adults whose scales had come off, and they're discovering this depth of knowledge of the Word of God and the presence of God that I pray that when we create this curriculum, that spiritual component is going to transfer all over this planet to large groups of people that have yet to discover Him.
Brad, we've got to pause because there's a huge difficulty for a lot of people. A lot of people will admit, I'm addicted to my gaming or whatever, those different apps that people get addicted to. A lot of people can admit that, but they just don't have the personal discipline to say, I'm going to take action. I mean, I know you and I know Beth, and you are very disciplined people. You're up early and you're exercising. You're doing all sorts of amazing things. You're going through and you're studying your PhD now. So many of us just don't know where to start getting about some personal discipline. Have you got a bit of a tip here for listeners today who are saying, I can hear what you're saying. I think it's all good, but I just haven't got the discipline to do that?
The one thing, Neil, that the data, and I have not analyzed the data, obviously, from the pilot study that I did at the church in New York State, nor have I been able to analyze the case study because I'm in the middle of gathering the data. But there's one thing that I can tell you that has emerged. The groups of people who chose to do the detox, those who did it in community, had a much higher rate of success than those that went alone. So they were pastored. That's very critical. They had a pastor, they had a leader that they followed. And once the addiction broke and the brain reset, they had to fill all of that time that they were spending on a screen with something else. And that's where the pastors came in and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. So he, did what a pastor does. So the community, this goes back to the book of Acts where it says they were meeting and gathering in one place, face to face. They were breaking bread together. They were continuing on in the apostles' doctrine. So once the brain had reset through getting rid of the addiction, they had to fill that time, these folks who have detoxed, and these wise pastors started saying it's time that we read books, printed books, not e-books, but printed books. And so the pastor, I think he brought a whole stack of books that he had read in hardly no time, and he put them on the pulpit and showed everyone. And then the young adults that I were interviewing last night, they were flying through all of these books. So it was a matter of getting rid of the addiction, filling that time that they had been using with their screen with productive things, and the discipline pretty much took care of itself, and because a hunger was birthed for things that they had never hungered for before, and then it became easy. So absolutely, the discipline is pretty much automatic when you are intentional at first, but then the habits develop and then you can go pretty much on autopilot.
Hey, Brad, I know that everyone listening can hear your American accent. And they are hearing, oh, he's in Australia, you're in Mackay, you're going to be here for some months, and this research that you're doing for your PhD, this doctorate you're studying for right now, are similar things emerging in Australia to what they do in the US? Sometimes we get a bit, comparison sensitive around what's happening in the US, what's happening in Australia. Is the research showing things are much the same, or are there differences?
Listen, the reality is this is pandemic. In other words, we call it an epidemic by country, but there's no statistical difference in the addiction rates between the countries. But let me say something about Australia, and I believe divine providence has brought me here. Australia is the first country, I'm talking about the federal government now, to ban social media, as you well know, for those under 16, and the ban goes into effect in November. Now, they're going to have quite a difficult time, I know, trying to implement this and maintain it and all that. But they have taken the stand. So this country and Sweden is the first country to remove all technology from classrooms because it's just simply not working. It's just getting, in the way. So your country, or I guess I should say my country, we've been coming here for 25 years. We consider it our second home, and our closest friends are in Australia. But this country here in Australia is leading the way. And our prayer is that domino that the government here has pushed over because of the love and the care for the children here. And it was all born, as you well know, out of suicides. The suicidal ideations were growing, and all of a sudden the suicide rate shot up amongst the very young as 12. So the government here has decided to do something about it. They banned social media because that was the culprit. So you're leading the way. This country is actually leading the way, and a lot of other countries, including my own, have their eyes on this country. So when I come to Parliament House in October to speak, I am going to be talking about that and complimenting, of course, and say, please stay the course. Now, I understand this is the state level, and that ban was happening on the federal level. But look, everything happens from the grassroots. And so I'm going to talk about the smartphones, and it may not win me a lot of brownie points with young people, but, it's the head of the snake, as it were. And so this country is leading the way. More doors have opened here in this country for me to speak on a governmental level. And so my hat's off. I'm just honored to be here. And this is where I need to be right now doing this research, because this is where the bleeding edge is.
You're in Australia a number of months. You're going to be speaking at the Queensland Parliament House on the 12th of October and the 13th, twice. Right. Can churches book you to speak while you're here, Brad?
They sure can. Now, I've had to take, other than churches, I have not been able to do schools this month because I'm wrapped up in this case study. But we're heading up to down to Rockhampton from here, then over to Perth, and then we'll be back to Brisbane. So, yes, if they want to contact me, just contact me at my website, bradhuddleston.com. There's a contact page. I don't have much space open right now, but the meeting in Parliament House, one of the two meetings in Parliament House, is open to the public. You'll have to register. You have to go through all the things that you would to do to get into Parliament House. But that one is going to be open. I'll be getting the details as soon as that information is available. I'll get that to you, Neil, as well as the rest of you guys there at Vision, and ask you to promote that so that people can come. And they're going to open one of those meetings up. The other one is a closed meeting. So, but if they want to book me to come to churches, either this trip or the next one, because we're already planning next year, I would be more than honored to serve churches here. Absolutely. Well,
for listeners, you might be able to connect and find out about Brad's movements on his website, bradhuddleston.com. That's bradhuddleston.com. Brad's first book was called Digital Cocaine. His newest book is called Digital Rehab, Learning to Live Again in the Real World. You'll be able to find those books at online booksellers, but bradhuddleston.com to connect with Brad. Brad, wonderful getting your insights. Thanks so much for being with us once again today on 2020.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I appreciate you so much. I look forward to catching up with you in October.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.